What's good, guys? Welcome back to Small Talk on Ted Fantasy Basketball. And today we're going to be going over our buy low candidates. And of course, I'm being joined with Anson.
What's up, guys? Last video, we covered sell high candidates. Those are players that we feel like you can get the most value if you trade away those players. Now we'll be going over some potential targets you can potentially trade for. These players have been struggling recently, and they are potentially players that you can trade for and get kind of a bargain on them.
Sounds good. Let's get started with our first candidate here. We got LeBron James, the GOAT himself. I know some of you guys are not gonna like to hear that, but he's the GOAT as of right now. So the last 2 weeks he's been averaging 40 fantasy points per game, not GOAT numbers for sure. But we obviously know, how good LeBron is when he's on the floor. And as of right now, it seems like he's having a little slump in his game. I know he's dealing with some injuries at the moment as well. But we just look at what he's been able to produce as an average. He averages about 49 fantasy points per game. And I think, in my opinion, as of right now, the Lakers need a lot more offense. And I think LeBron is still going to take the most bulk of that. So his fantasy points should definitely come back up. 10 fantasy point drop is just is unlike LeBron. So I'm definitely expecting LeBron to come back up. And if anyone is trying to move LeBron, they're like, oh, he's injury prone. They don't want to deal with the injuries. You can try grab LeBron for a steal.
LeBron just hasn't had an impressive game as of recent. He has missed a couple games here and there, so his game log doesn't reflect how good of a player LeBron is. Throughout the season, he's averaged close to 50 fantasy points per game, and we could see a even bigger spike in performance as the Lakers are outside of the playoff picture. LeBron will most likely step it up to get the Lakers in the playoffs. And LeBron just hasn't been good. Last 2 weeks ranks as 47. Obviously, that isn't who LeBron is. He's only averaged 40 fantasy points per game. Slight dip in minutes, slight dip in points per game, field goal attempts, aggressiveness, and he's also reduced his blocks to 0.14. He just hasn't been getting any blocks. His steals has been cut to more than half the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. Just very unlike LeBron defensively and offensively. Easily can see LeBron picking it up. And if someone in your league is complaining or someone isn't really sure if they want to keep LeBron on their roster, just try to send them an offer. The worst thing they can say is no. So don't worry about that. So let's move on from LeBron. We got DeMar DeRozan. And DeMar DeRozan his name has been on the chopping block saying he might be traded, et cetera, et cetera. But just looking at his fantasy output right now, he's he's underperforming easily. You can just look at it. 37 fantasy points per game, 20 points per game, 44% field goal. Very unlike DeMar. Um, just taking a look at his stats from the previous season, he's been averaging 24.5, close to 25 points per game, 50% field goal, and he has been very, very healthy. So he looks like a very, very good pickup if you guys are looking for someone to add on your team. So if someone is on your fantasy saying, "Hey, I don't want DeMar," or anyone want DeMar, I want to trade DeMar away, shoot an offer. Don't be afraid to say, "Oh man, DeMar's been struggling. I don't really want him on my team," because like Anson and I are telling you right now, he's a buy low. So make sure you guys try to get DeMar DeRozan for a good steal if you guys could.
Yeah, he Demar just hasn't been playing by like himself, and I feel like it's mainly due to the Chicago Bulls being really bad. They just aren't competitive, and Demar, he's someone that likes to compete. Ideally he should be in a competitive team. If you look last year, where the Bulls were a little bit more competitive, Demar did average 41.5 fantasy points per game. With the trade deadline coming soon, and Demar likely getting traded to a more competitive team, we should see Demar more like his usual self. He should be attempting more field goals. He should be shooting the ball better. Throughout his career, Demar has been a very efficient uh, player from the field, shooting over 50% throughout his career. So if he gets traded, which he most likely will, we should expect to see about 40 fantasy points from DeMar DeRozan.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Let's move on from DeMar. We got Pascal Siakam. Man, the man just got traded and he's already in a buy low video. But let's take a look at Siakam. He's been kind of struggling. 33, about 34 fantasy points per game, 21 points per game, 14 field goal attempts, about 5 rebounds. Very unlike Pascal, I think he was been struggling with shot attempts since he was in Toronto, but now I feel like he should have the green light with Tyrese also being out. And I think Pascal should be easily putting up 42, 43 fantasy points a game easily, and maybe even push the 45 mark. But as of right now, he is definite like a super buy low. So if people are saying, "Hey, I don't want Pascal anymore," he got traded. He's not performing well. I think either tonight or tomorrow before his next game, try to get him, or else if he starts popping up, people might be tend to hold on to Pascal a little bit more. Like I said, Tyrese out, Siakam didn't perform, so if people are still like, "Hey, if that was all they needed to see, try to get Pascal from them easily. Try to say, hey, what do you want for Pascal? I like Pascal as a player. I know he might not be as good on the Pacers, yada yada. Whatever you need to say to them to get Pascal on your team, just try to get Pascal on your team.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a lot of things you can try to use to your advantage with Pascal struggling on his new team. You could definitely try to use that and say, hey, this is kind of Halliburton's team. Pascal's kind of the secondary option, and look how he's been doing with the Pacers. Hasn't cracked 40 fantasy points per game. Logically speaking, though, that's probably not true. Pascal Siakam, if you just took away the first 2 months of the season, Pascal really stepped it up. Started playing like his usual self in the Toronto Raptors, and he's honestly in a better spot in the Pacers than he was with the Raptors. The Pacers are the number one offensive team. They're also number one in pace, which means that games with the Pacers usually have more field goal attempts. So Pascal Siakam should have a lot of shot attempts. He should be able to get more rebounds, play at a faster pace. Tyrese Halliburton, although he's the best player on that team, he's more of a pass first, facilitating guard. And players that play with uh, Tyrese Halliburton usually do better. If you even look at like Miles Turner, for example, every time Miles Turner have a good game, it's usually because Halliburton's in. Whenever Halliburton's out, Miles Turner really struggles. So I think that Tyrese Halliburton can really have that similar impact to Pascal Siakam. I think Siakam he struggled in Toronto mainly because all the best players in Toronto kind of have that same role as Pascal Siakam. Anunoby, Scotty Barnes, they all kind of have a more similar play style to Pascal, where Pascal, there just isn't enough room for Pascal to kind of be himself. But with the Pacers, I'm expecting him to at least average 42 to 45 fantasy points per game.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. Pascal Siakam is a major buy low, so if you guys can try and move Siakam, try to get him. But if you have Siakam, this is a good sign saying, hey, just relax. Don't take any impulsive trades. Just take your time. Just allow Siakam to wait until Tyrese comes back, see how he plays. But if someone's trying to force you to give us Siakam, I think it'd be better if you just kind of hold on to him for a little bit, unless the offer is really really tempting. But besides that, let's move on from Siakam. We got Brandon Ingram. So Ingram has been killing it in fantasy, but it looks like he's been going through a little tough stretch at the moment. So it'll be a little difficult moving because I know Ingram had some really, really good games, but as of right now, he's kind of been struggling, and Zion's been kind of doing better. So maybe you can use that to your advantage, saying, hey, Zion's been better. It is technically Zion's team, and you could try to get Ingram onto your team. But you do have to be aware Ingram does have an injury issue. So if you guys have a lot of injury prone players on your team, maybe don't try to get Ingram. But at the same time, he is a major buy low. So if you can get him for a steal, I don't see the harm in it. He's been playing through almost every single game, so he looks relatively healthy. My bad. But yeah, just look at a quick game log: 33 fantasy points a game, about 16 points per game on 13 field goals. So he's shooting very, very terribly. And Ingram isn't really known to shoot very terribly. Like he's usually pretty efficient. If you just look at his stats, about 22 points per game on 16 field goal attempts, shooting about 49%. So yeah, he's just having a tough shooting streak. But I think he should be able to bounce back easily. So if someone's trying to move Ingram or you're trying to grab Ingram, I think this would be the best time for you to try to get him.
Yeah, just Allen kind of explained everything already. Ingram's usually a lot more efficient. You should evaluate him at around 40 fantasy points per game. So try to think of someone that we mentioned in our sell high video that's currently averaging a lot more than 40 fantasy points per game, but you shouldn't evaluate them at 40 fantasy points per game. And then there you go. Brandon Ingram could be the perfect trade target.
Sounds good. Yeah, if you guys did have anybody on your sell high, like Anson said, try to trade them for Ingram. Easy pickup right there. Let's move on from Ingram. We got AE. Man, I know a lot of people not sure about how AE is on the sell high or on a buy low video, my bad. But if you look at his stats, he's actually been kind of struggling. 32 fantasy points a game, 20 points per game, 15 field goal attempts. So he's shooting really, really bad. He's shooting about 30% from the 3 point. No, like half a steal per game, about 0.1 blocks, and that's very unlike AE. I think most of the time he's very defensive like minded, so I don't expect that to stick with them. And just look at his how he's been overall performing: 25 points per game on 19 field goal attempts, about 37% from the three, which is better. 1.2 steals per game, about 0.6 blocks. So those are easy numbers that can easily pick back up. I think AE can easily, those are numbers that I think are more consistent for AE. But like I said, if you guys want AE, I think this would be the perfect moment to try to get AE. And if you do have AE, don't try to move him yet. Give him some time to come back. I know Cat's been having some really, really good games. Gobert's been doing all right. But AE should easily pick back up and average what he's been averaging, 42 fantasy points per game.
Yeah, I think you should evaluate Anthony Edwards at about 44 to 45 fantasy points per game. Just these last 2 weeks, he's been really struggling. If you look at his game log, it doesn't reflect how badly he's been struggling because some of his really bad games the past 2 weeks were kind of in that first half of the week. So if we just pull up his game log on the fantasy app, you won't really see how bad he's been doing. But yeah, his fantasy average of 41.4 this season is definitely skewed by some of those terrible games. I would definitely evaluate him more closer to 44 to 45 fantasy points. So if you want to trade someone, you can maybe trade a player that's averaging 43 and someone who's borderline rosterable on your team. Maybe try to package those two and try to get Anthony Edwards.
Yeah, I agree with you. So that should wrap up our buy low videos, right? If you guys have a sell high candidate, you guys can try to move those guys for these buy low candidates. And I'm not saying it will work. You probably have to do some convincing, some persuading. You got to say something like, hey, I want this guy. This guy's doing really good. Whatever you guys try to get. But yeah, it's all fun and games at the end of the day. But yeah, these are some of the candidates that Anson I feel like buy low. And if you guys are interested in these candidates, I think like Anson I said, I think this would be the best moment for you guys to try to get these guys. And if one of them started having good games, it'd be very, very tough to move because the people were like, oh, never mind, he was just having a bad stretch. But like I said, if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you guys give us a like. And if you guys are not in our Discord yet, our Discord link will be in the description, completely free. Right, it's a little community where if you guys have trade offers or you guys are interested in somebody saying you want to ask us what our opinions are or our opinions are, Anson and I and some of my homies in there, we're gonna do our best to answer your questions, try to help you guys win your fantasy season. Is there anything else you want to add for them, Anson?
Yeah. In the comments, if you guys disagree or you guys got any other buy low candidates, please just mention it. We can have a discussion in the YouTube comments. And yeah, also, like Alan said, go join our Discord. You can talk about trades, you can talk about anything basketball related.
Yeah, sounds good. Hope you guys have a great day and hope you guys enjoyed this video. And we'll see you guys in our next video. Peace.